G'day guys, I just finished rewatching the entire Death Wish series, and on a night not too long ago, my partner, my husband and I all sat down to watch the first movie and were treated to a grim, visceral thriller about what it is to turn to a life of violence after suffering a psychological meltdown. In the aftermath of that, we still had the energy to keep going, but wanted something a lot more lighthearted, silly and undemanding to serve as the second end of our double feature. And after scrolling for long enough, we managed to find a perfect contrast.
Ho, 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 ho. Delightfully devilish, Seymour.
Yes everybody, welcome back, and today we're going to be looking at a Hollywood attempt at an Australian classic which came recommended to me many years ago by my friend Courtney Shewan. Kangaroo Jack is a 2003 comedy with a tumultuous production history which realistically is far more interesting than any actual writing that went into the screenplay. The film originated from a script written back in 1996 titled Down and Under, which netted its co-writers a whopping payday of $1.4 million, and it originally intended to star Nicolas Cage and the late Chris Farley. I can imagine those two must have been an incredible duo if they ended up working together, but sadly that never ended up happening. Down and Under was eventually cast with the dorky kid from Stand By Me and the African-American comic relief from every 2000s movie ever. The original script was filmed as an adult-oriented mob comedy which was loaded with sex, violence and cursing, but unfortunately the film's producers ended up being dissatisfied with the results of the first rough cut, and the feedback in test screenings was not much more positive. The one scene that audiences had anything positive to say about was allegedly the scene involving a kangaroo, so that feedback plus the marketing campaign behind the recent box office hit Snow Dogs encouraged the studio to try and shift its marketing focus away from that of a mafia-themed dark comedy and more in the direction of a supposed family-friendly, animal-themed comedy movie. Yeah, the studio actually gave them another $10 million to shoot extensive new footage, including footage that replaced the original animatronic kangaroo with a CGI one that wrapped in one scene, which of course the studio marketed the absolute shit out of in the trailers. The new comedy movie they ended up pumping out was titled Kangaroo Jack, but despite the fact that test audiences allegedly responded so positively to the new cut of the film that Warner Brothers called it the biggest improvement they had ever seen in one of their reshot movies, when Kangaroo Jack finally came out, it was savaged by critics and has occasionally been called one of the worst movies ever made. It currently maintains an 8% critical rating on Rotten Tomatoes, as well as a 29% from audiences. And there was numerous things this film was criticized for, but the number one criticism was the fact that it marketed itself as a family-friendly comedy where the titular character was the main character, you know, since he was the only one to appear on the poster, when in actuality, this was a wildly inappropriate movie with a lot of vulgarity, violence, and only about 5 minutes of Kangaroo Jack actually being on screen. I never actually watched Kangaroo Jack all the way through as a kid. I only ever saw clips, which I never really thought all that much of. But going into it as an adult and watching it, knowing about its troubled production history, I went in viewing it with an entirely different mindset. So I arguably had a very different viewing experience to the number of parents who took their kids to see something very different from what they expected. And to tell you the truth, I actually had a really good time with this movie on the 3 occasions I watched it prior to this review. So viewers from all over the world, join me as we go down and under. Kangaroo Jack starts in 1982, depicting a child named Charlie Carbone. A heavy amount of expository narration explains that Charlie's mum is marrying Sal Maggio, a notorious gangster played by Christopher Walken. We also get to see Charlie's mum portrayed by 3-time Academy Award nominee Diane Cannon, and despite the fact that the character gets several mentions in the film, this is the only scene she actually appears in. I would presume she had a bigger role in the original cut of the film when they trimmed her out in the edit. After Sal's apprentice Frankie tricks Charlie into pulling a Harry Holt, he gets saved by Louis Booker. And 20 years later, Charlie now works at a hair salon owned by Sal.
He did it for my mother. Of course, his goons come in every week and take 80% of the profits. That he did for himself.
And Louis is played by alleged sexual predator Anthony Anderson. Yeah, while researching for this video, I unfortunately found out that Anthony Anderson, the funny man from almost every 2000s comedy film ever, has been accused of sexual assault on at least 3 occasions.
Oh, that man is sick!
I just got this job delivering TVs, but my partner got sick. He had one of those microwave chimichangas, man.
Louis, why do all your stories start off this way?
A good question. For another time.
I need your help on this one, all right? 2 hours tops, that's all I need. This is really important for me.
Louis, you have a job.
I need a job where I'm treated like a man, where I get some respect. Ain't that what Aretha said?
To Take it from someone who has worked as a truck driver and a loader, I have rarely experienced less respect in the workplace. Minus, of course, that one time I worked for the YMCA.
Come on, man, what's wrong?
It's just so frustrating. You have no idea how difficult it is to get anywhere when Sal Maggio is your stepfather.
Hey, Sal bought you the beauty salon, didn't he?
He barely lets me keep enough to stay alive.
Hey, look.
This movie is really merciless with firing off its exposition. Very few lines of dialogue so far have not been that.
If Sal Maggio was my stepdaddy, you know what I'd be doing right now? I'd just be, bah! Come on, Charlie, break it down with me. Just,
That's supposed to mean something?
Go over to the curb.
Lewis? What? Whose truck is this?
That I can't be certain of. It came with the TV.
This is a stolen vehicle.
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
The fellas end up on the run from the cops, crashing into everything and spilling the televisions. But we get some upbeat music and shots of a dog. You know, because that makes it kid-friendly.
That's what I'm talking about!
What it is, soul brother? I think the dog just peed on my leg.
You wouldn't think much of it on the first glance, but that is the first of many, many, many toilet humor jokes in the film. Although I will say that, subjectively speaking, they do get a little funnier. When dropping off the TVs, it turns out that the delivery address was Sal Maggio's warehouse, and the fellas have just led the cops to them.
That's the dumbest idea I've ever heard.
I was just upset.
Perhaps you should have thought of that before you took your dog on a crime spree.
Jump, Deacon! Jump! Oi! Fucking settle down! Move, mate, you idiot!
They escape through a chute that leads them down to the docks, and despite that being the only conceivable exit, the cops prove unable to follow them. Instead, they just seize everything in the warehouse.
Sal, we understand that you're upset. It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
A lion can raise a mouse, but the mouse is still a mouse. And you, Charlie, are that mouse. Chicken blood.
That is an oddly specific number of animal metaphors, and yet not one of them has been a kangaroo.
Excuse me, Sal. You said that he was a mouse, so that would be mouse blood, not chicken blood.
You are technically correct. The best kind of correct.
I'm giving us both another chance to redeem yourselves.
Take this envelope to JFK Airport.
No problem.
You catch a nice flight for Sydney, Australia. Take the old South Road due north to a place called Coober Pedy, where you meet a man named Mr. Smith. You give this envelope to Mr. Smith.
What's in here, man?
You will not look in that envelope under any circumstances.
No, I don't think that's going to be happening.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
Well, that was pointless.
On the flight, Lewis predictably opens the envelope and finds 50 grand, leading to a classic toilet joke, which I imagine was all compiled of random dubs in post-production.
I've never seen so much green in one little brown package.
And now it's in my hands.
Oh, it slipped out. Oh, this is one big load.
What a mess.
Maybe we should just flush it.
We're not gonna flush it.
Okay, that one doesn't actually work as a double entendre. Whether the characters want to take their money to its intended destination or keep it for themselves, nobody wins if either of them decide to flush it. Although, that is way too much thought to be putting into a poop joke in a film titled Kangaroo Jack.
I'm gonna put it in my pocket, leave this room, and take it to Australia.
Well, if you're gonna do that, give it here.
Give it here! Give it here! Give it here, Kendall!
Then we cut to customs, where Lewis is wasting all his Polaroid film on pictures of exhausted tourists waiting to get through the line.
We are carrying $50,000 of mob money. If they find it, I'm anticipating consequences. Like perhaps, I don't know, let's say prison.
Hey, good day, mate.
Is that the only thing he knows how to say?
The key is to act like you don't have anything to hide.
Brilliant. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for their fucking useless advice. Thank you.
Thanks, boys.
G'day, mate.
Yeah, I'd be sus too. Charlie really butchered his delivery of those words. On the drive to Coober Pedy, naturally the filmmakers chose to play Down Under by Men at Work, which frankly I think should be our national anthem. Advance Australia Fair is as dull as a dead dingo's donga.
What's eating you, man? Don't tell me this is about that girl on the plane.
No, it's more than that.
That's a stretch that you made that connection. Maybe it was the intense interrogation he went through at the airport. That looked pretty rough.
Let's face it, Lewis, I'm never gonna find the right girl.
You gotta stop it with this liver stuff, man.
Seriously, what brought this up? Was there more to that conversation that just got cut out in post?
You better run! You better get coming!
I killed a kangaroo.
I'm just going to say that running over a kangaroo is one of the most Australian things you can ever experience, no matter how much you don't want to. My current car is actually being held together by screws and tape after hitting 2 of them on separate occasions. And I can tell you from experience, they don't go under the car. They grind you to a halt and fly through the air before often getting up and hopping away. They are sturdy motherfuckers.
It's the national symbol of Australia.
That's a negatory yank. Our national symbol is Mad Dog Adrian, and I will die on that broken hill.
I read in the book that the kangaroos are the rodents of the outback. We cool.
Well, he is partially correct there. They are a hazard on our roads in the same way deer are in America, but the claim that they are rodents has given leeway for the mass slaughter of them for their meat and fur.
And as an environmentalist, I'm against that.
But you guys look so adorable. Good day, mate.
Will you stop saying that?
They name the kangaroo Jackie Legs and dress him up for a photo op before he turns out to be okay, as they very often do after car accidents. Jackie Legs kicks Charlie over and hops away.
Now I never have to see that stupid red jacket of yours again!
Charlie! Charlie! The kangaroo got the money.
I've got to say, I have never seen an actor transition from laughing to crying with such comedic effect. Anthony Anderson honestly just nails that.
I put the money in the jacket, and the jacket on the kangaroo, and now he hopping away.
Ah, that's a shame. Who puts a jacket with 50,000 on a kangaroo?
Well, funnily enough, this movie is actually based on an urban legend that writer Steve Bing heard as a teenager, where 2 Boston college students driving across Australia hit a roo, put the driver's Red Sox jacket on it for a photo op, and then hopped away with their Land Rover keys still in his pocket. So to answer your question, Boston college boys, allegedly.
As it turns out, this is hard.
What are these things?
They're termite mounds! I read about them in the book!
Careful, Lewis, you almost missed one!
They crash and Jackie Legs hops away, giving us the first of many, many scenes where a CGI kangaroo goofs around in a manner that doesn't affect the plot whatsoever. The fellas make it to Alice Springs and drink Foster's, arguably the worst beer I have ever had in my life. In the real world, I have never actually seen people drinking Foster's, and I've only ever had it once. It is the largest selling Australian beer worldwide, but it is incredibly uncommon over here. More people drink Great Northern Australia wide, and that beer is often the butt of jokes itself. Learn that, Hollywood.
Where's your phone?
Around at the Dunnies.
You guys have a Denny's?
No, the Dunny. The Bog Trough. The Long Drop.
What goddamn language is that?
The Thunderbox.
You know what? I'm just gonna look for it by the bathroom.
Lewis contacts Mr. Smith to tell him that his package has been temporarily misplaced, but he just assumes they stole it.
We're gonna get it back?
You'd be a banger short of a Barbie if you didn't. When I find ya...
Oi! We don't call them bangers over here. They're called snags, you fucking commie.
I'll chop you into snags and feed you to the crocs.
Oh, not the Crocs. Bobcat is gonna have a field day.
Well, I ain't spending any time on it.
You mind leaving a little for the camels?
You're American.
Yep, the lead romantic interest in this film is American. Our boys travelled all the way down under to meet an American girl.
This sucks!
American Jane tells Lewis to get a plane and a tranquilizer gun, and then we catch up with Jackie Legs again. And every single time this film cuts to Jackie Legs, it's playing the exact same song, which for the record is the Dr. Dre song The Next Episode, but arranged by Armageddon composer Trevor Rabin. That is a crossover that nobody asked for, and one that I am very glad exists. After a copious amount of focus on drinking in this supposed kids movie, Lewis comes to Charlie with a plan.
I figured out how we're gonna catch that kangaroo.
Wow, a gun!
I walked to this wildlife office, and there's this American girl that works there, and she is... Ooh, bam,
I repeat, kids movie.
If I didn't know you better, I'd say this is a honey of a plan.
Dang, Skippy.
No pun intended.
Our friend feels they pocketed the 50 G's.
Maybe they figured it out.
My stepson couldn't figure out a cheese sandwich.
I can't figure out a cheese sandwich, and that's not because I'm a vegan, it's because I just don't see the appeal of a sandwich where cheese is the key ingredient. And Tom Green agrees with me there. He had a whole series of jokes about it in Freddy Got Fingered for that exact same reason. Unless, of course, we're talking about a cheese toastie, or a grilled cheese as y'all Yanks like to call it. Then I get it.
I mean, if there's no cheese on a cheese sandwich, it's basically just 2 slices of bread. If word of that were to get out, Well, I could lose my job. I could lose all of this!
Do you think you can take us down a little lower? Hang on here, niggas, we're going in. Did he say nigga? No sense. Did he say nigga? A little lower, a little lower.
Sounds like he's quoting the executives telling the writers just how lowbrow to make this movie.
Look, it's Jackie Legs. There he is. That's him. That's him. I knew this would work. Say hello to my little friend.
You know, this is the second time on this show I have reviewed a critically panned supposed kids movie with a Scarface reference. The first being The Master of Disguise.
Say hello to my little friend.
Whilst trying to sedate Jackie Legs, Lewis naturally butchers it like everything else and hits the pilot instead.
Can you lean over here and take the stick?
I'm honestly surprised they didn't actually go for a wiener joke there, so I'm gonna do it for them.
Take the stick firmly in hand and
Penis.
Penis, yeah.
Stage 4! Fire and crash!
I believe that's actually stage 9, 11.
Another happy landing.
You never shoot the pilot! Assume crash positions!
Blue, we already crashed. Blue, you're my boy!
The fellas start wandering the desert and come across dingoes, which of course means one essential stereotype is getting referenced.
Hey, Charlie, you gotta help me out, man. They gonna get me like they got that baby.
You know that's a true story. Lady lost a kid. You about to cross some fucking lines.
Guys.
After wandering too deep into the Australian outback, the movie pulls one of those old-fashioned mirage jokes.
Nigga. I'm 100% nigga.
They got Slurpees. Oh, Charlie.
Brain freeze.
This is bad comedy.
Every decision you make, Lewis, is a disaster.
That's right, Charlie. Just blame me. That way you relieve yourself of all responsibility.
Yeah, Lewis has the gall to say this after leading cops into a mafia warehouse, losing $50,000 to a kangaroo, and then shooting the pilot of their plane with a paralysis dart.
You just complain and whine like a woman.
You want to see me do something?
Do you want to see my balls?
Under the impression that he's witnessing another mirage, Charlie quite literally sexually assaults American Jane.
They feel so real.
They're real and they're spectacular.
One could argue that because he didn't think she was real, he didn't know he was committing sexual assault, but to even joke about it and to trivialize consent like that is not cool. Especially in a movie that went through hasty studio re-edits to try and make it family-friendly. Along the way, no one managed to cut out the rape joke.
Yo, punk. Yo, punk. Wake up.
How'd you know red was my favorite color?
You can talk. He can talk. He can talk. He can talk.
And I can sing. I said a hip hop. The hippie to the hip hop.
Pun intended.
This entire dream sequence was one of the most heavily marketed scenes from the trailer, giving many viewers the impression that the entire film would be about a talking, rapping kangaroo.
But that's not the way it happened.
Lewis?
Next time you're drowning in the ocean, call Free Willy. Let Willy set you free.
This kangaroo sounds like Harold Holt's lifeguard.
6.5 hours later.
Drink this. It'll bring down the swelling. Unfortunately, it'll also make your testicles fall off. I'm kidding.
Kids movie.
It won't bring down the swelling.
You can't beat a classic stitch-up, I reckon.
American Jane is quick to forgive the literal sexual assault that just occurred and agrees to help them find Jackie Legs, so they venture off into the desert on camels.
These are noble beasts, my friend. Proud, majestic. Oh, come on. Really? Ew. Oh, please.
I moved here with a friend from Milwaukee 3 years ago for a semester abroad. I never went back.
Milwaukee. You know, I once had a...
Oh! What is with these camels?
No! Dude! No f***ing way!
I am not gonna lie, I laughed myself into a delirious state rewatching this clip again and again, because this is the moment where everything in the film collides. The sheer stupidity of the writing, the relentless reliance on potty humor, and the way that Jerry O'Connell's voice goes up and down between tones when he says that line.
What is with these camels?
That one was me.
You happy? Fatty make a funny.
The Yanks make it to a kangaroo patch and train to capture roos over the course of a montage that was visibly filmed to be a longer scene and hastily trimmed down to have the audio muted in post.
Got trained to the neck, crashed me plane, rescue party knocked me out and left me to die. All because of a bloody boomer.
Well, that sucks.
What's a boomer?
What? A boomer.
That is a good question. And Scotty?
So that's Jackie Legs.
Kangaroo Jack in the flesh. He said it! He said it!
We have to disguise ourselves. Get rid of our human scent.
And how are we gonna do that?
I love racism!
To add to the long list of inappropriate jokes in Kangaroo Jack, here is 3 Americans covered in traditional indigenous body art. What is traditionally an important part of First Nations culture is now being exploited for the sake of a completely throwaway joke in an early 2000s comedy. And it all proves meaningless anyway when Lewis steps on an anthill which causes him to scare Jackie Legs away.
What are you doing?
Jesse! I was gonna take a bath.
Go. Yes.
No.
You know, this scene kind of clarifies that regardless of whether she's a mirage or not, Charlie really doesn't have much respect for the boundaries of a woman.
Hey, what are you looking at?
Well, you look first.
Well, yeah, I looked.
So I look too, all right?
You're both just awful.
Come near me, I'll kill you.
And considering the way you behaved around her last time, you can't really blame her. The next day, our heroes wake up to Mr. Smith.
Where's the money?
Where's the dough?
Mr. Smith takes them on a hunt for the money, and Charlie finally summons the courage to stand up for himself.
My name's Carbone, which means skinny white boy with the gun.
Actually, carbone translates to coal, which is a notoriously black substance. I'm assuming this was part of the joke. The mob rocks up and turns their guns on Charlie. As the Paisans and the Drongos fight it out, our heroes ride off on camelback and we end up in a chase.
Now this is pod racing.
Granted, I've never personally seen a movie with a camelback chase before, so I'll give Kangaroo Jack credit for possibly pioneering that. The villains get stuck en route, Lewis successfully recovers the money and flies over a cliff's edge, Charlie lifts him to safety, but the mob ain't done yet.
What do you think he was paying Smith 50 grand for?
You mean we traveled halfway across the world to pay for our own execution?
You 2 guys were the bagmen for your own hit.
Pretty clever.
Just as all hope seems lost, in comes an indigenous police officer to the rescue. Frankie tries to run, but Charlie stops him with the skills he acquired in the training montage.
You saved my life. You don't owe me anymore. We're having a very intimate, non-gay moment.
Not that there's anything wrong with that.
Charlie manages to recover the jacket from Jackie Legs and comes to a realization.
If you hadn't put the money in the jacket, then the jacket on the kangaroo, we would have delivered the money to Smith, and he would have killed us. Your lucky jacket.
The science works out.
Sal and his goons go to jail, Charlie becomes rich off a shampoo made from Australian berries, and Lewis is still doing Lewis things. The end. Oh yeah, wait, there's also some credit cookies, because we're in 2003, a simpler time.
Wait a minute! The movie's called Kangaroo Jack! It should end with me!
We got that right.
Is Kangaroo Jack a good movie?
Yeah!
This is actually the 3rd time on this series that I have talked about a comedy from the early 2000s which has often landed on the list of worst movies ever made and has also received widespread criticism for marketing itself as a family comedy despite being loaded with adult themes and jokes that aren't appropriate for kids. However, unlike The Master of Disguise and The Cat in the Hat, which both allegedly intended to turn out that way, Kangaroo Jack found itself in this position as a result of studio-imposed edits and rewrites. But just like those 2 movies, there is plenty of fun to be had with this Frankenstein comedy movie. Don't get me wrong, the film is a complete mess. We'll never get to see the original vision for the film, and the fact that Warner Brothers thought they could turn an R-rated mob comedy into a PG-friendly, animal-themed family movie in the most half-assed of fashions is a remarkable testament to misguided studio hubris. Nonetheless, this tonally jumbled, wildly not inappropriate for kids result of a movie is still rife with humorous energy, assuming you can either overlook the messy production history or possibly appreciate it for the same reason. Kangaroo Jack gets remarkable things wrong as a film. Most obviously the fact that it committed the bare minimum effort into trying to make a family-friendly movie. And when I say bare minimum, I mean that throughout all the reshoots and edits this film went through, they still managed to leave a joke in there where the protagonist literally sexually assaults the love interest. Because back in 2003, apparently that was funny. Yeah, it's just as inappropriate now as it was then. The central premise of the film is 2 guys losing money from the mob en route to their own execution. So how they expected to turn this into a family-friendly movie really goes beyond me, and predictably they butchered it. Jerry O'Connell says that there is in fact an R-rated cut of this movie somewhere out there, and that he hoped it was going to be his Reservoir Dogs and a movie that would catapult him to leading man stardom. Although he's had a pretty solid career, it unfortunately didn't do that, and it seems like we'll never get to see the movie. Yet Kangaroo Jack is fascinating to watch just because of the fact that this actually happened. There is no telling how successful the original would have been, with the exception of the tidbit regarding the negative test scores, but the hybrid they pumped out grossed $88.9 million on a budget of $60 million, which still wouldn't be enough to break even, but evidently sounds like a lot more than the original Down and Under might have accrued. And you can tell that the re-release version has been stripped to its core by the pacing alone. There is seldom a meaningful character moment in the entire film, with the edit opting to just cut straight from one joke to the next as fast as it can. And honestly, this does work in the film's favor. You don't go to see a film called Kangaroo Jack because you're expecting some level of complex character writing, you go for the silly gimmicks. And this film blasts those at audiences on rapid fire, with quick pacing and an 89-minute runtime, which ultimately does work in its favor to ensure it doesn't overstay its welcome. Assuming, of course, you're not over the movie within its first 10 minutes, which is entirely possible. The screenplay doesn't have much to offer, but what little it does gets pumped out so fast that if one joke doesn't land, then you're on to the next one quickly. The humor is consistently lowbrow and juvenile in such a way that even when the jokes themselves aren't always funny, the fact that someone actually thought they would be funny becomes laughable in itself. So oftentimes you might find yourself not laughing with the movie, but at it. But regardless, you're still laughing at a comedy movie, so even if it's unintentional, it has done its job. And along the way, it's hard to deny that there are some decent aspects to the movie. Kangaroo Jack has the feel-good comedy vibe that the undemanding comedy movies of the early 2000s frequently carried, all the way from the upbeat soundtrack to the predictably happy ending. Its light-hearted tone undercuts the dark premise of the movie with a very silly screenplay, and the cast do a solid job trying to keep the comedic energy alive. Jerry O'Connell proves himself a perfectly capable leading man with a handsome charm and a solid sense of comic timing, whilst Anthony Anderson brings his over-the-top energy to taking center stage as the comic relief. Anderson is arguably the real star of the movie because you can see how heavily it leans on his charisma to make things funny, and his dedication to the role really proves effective more often than not. And the way the stars play off each other is excellent. They have the chemistry of two real pals, and the sincerity of it compensates for the lack of sincerities in the studio's handling of everything else in the film. Michael Shannon also shows some brief glimpses of the intense energy that would later make him a star, whilst Christopher Walken skates by doing exactly what he does best, playing Christopher Walken. As far as Estella Warren, there really isn't too much to report. They didn't write her to be funny or to have any real personality whatsoever. The priority seems to have been to cast someone who's just easy on the eyes, so it makes sense for them to go with a supermodel. I'll never understand why they didn't just cast a proper Sheila to play the role of a woman working down under in Australia to protect animals. We have actresses down under. Plenty of them. Ones who are capable of carrying an Australian movie. So I don't get why the studio decided to cast a woman whose biggest roles to date included being in the much maligned remake of Planet of the Apes and the box office catastrophe Driven, both movies which actually won her the Golden Raspberry Award for Worst Supporting Actress, regardless of the fact that the Razzies can get fucked. I mean, they nominated both Christopher Walken and Anthony Anderson for Worst Supporting Actor in this movie, when there are many other aspects of the film that are much more negative than them. But I will give the studio props for casting the late David Numbajar in a reasonably prominent role. I really hope I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Google really isn't helping me out there. But it is always nice to see Indigenous representation on the screen, even if it does come in a film that also makes fun of Indigenous culture by using their body paint for the sake of a throwaway joke. Of course, being an Aussie myself, I do also have to look at this film from an Australian perspective. It is clear that the Australian element of the story really could not have less to do with Kangaroo Jack. Setting this movie in Australia served no other purpose than to provide a landscape with some tantalizing aesthetics and to provide a front for CGI kangaroos to hop around. I mean, like I said, they couldn't even cast an Australian to play Jessie. That's not a shot at Estella Warren, she does just fine in the role, but why couldn't she have been Australian? The script tries too hard to make Mr. Smith an Australian stereotype, and Alice Springs is portrayed as a single street instead of as what it is, the third largest Australian settlement. I will give the movie credit for making a really cute character out of Jackie Legs, and for the fact that the visual effects are actually great and still hold up to this day. But you could change this film to any other country and make Jackie Legs a different animal, and you would still have pretty much the exact same thing. No effort appears to have been made to actually tap into the rich tapestry of Australian culture, outside of a few surface skimming jokes, and every Australian character gets reduced to playing a glorified cameo. And yet, despite all of that, the ultimate truth of Kangaroo Jack is that despite its tonal jumbles of mismatched family comedy with a crime narrative, the wasted potential of its talented cast, and consistently juvenile nature of the film, I still had a lot of fun with it. The movie is such a mess with a behind-the-scenes story so messy that it makes the film funnier than it ends up being objectively. The nostalgic feel-good nature of the movie, short runtime and fast pace made it an easy viewing experience, and I walked away from this movie quoting it for weeks at a time. I cannot remember the last time I saw a new comedy movie came out that had that same kind of effect on me, nor can I think of one that I actually wanted to sit down and re-watch. I'm sure there are some, but between trying to remember anything between now and the time I went to see Jackass Forever at the cinemas, or just sitting down and rewatching Kangaroo Jack, I am easily going to go with the latter. Kangaroo Jack is a great movie to have on in the background, or on your hard drive when you've got a long flight ahead or simply no internet access. This is an energetic film that offers an undemanding low standard of comedy, and if you go in with that expectation, you might be surprised to find that there is fun to be had with Kangaroo Jack. As a final note, it is worth mentioning that Warner Brothers did in fact go ahead and commission an animated sequel to this movie entitled Kangaroo Jack G'day USA, and this time they set out to make a family-friendly comedy movie and actually did it. Although the film is ultimately a forgettable animated movie which has nothing on the countless other animated movies in the market. In fact, it's only memorable for recasting every single role, with Anthony Anderson being replaced by Jar Jar Binks actor Ahmed Best, and for the fact that not a single Australian voice actor came on board. Not even the voice of Jackie Legs. He was played by the voice of Johnny Bravo. Between a film that was intended for kids with nothing special to boast about and a film pretending to be for kids that's actually loaded with raunchy humor and violence, only one of those two is the slightest bit memorable or rewatchable, and it ain't the animated one. Kangaroo Jack gets 6 rapping animals out of 10. The studio-imposed edits smother whatever value the original screenplay had under a myriad of tonal inconsistencies, inappropriate jokes, and false advertising. But the earnest efforts of some stellar leads mixed with a lighthearted tone, fast-paced, and nostalgic feel-good nature make this $60 million blunder a quotable and undemanding viewing experience. And this concludes the review portion of the video, so feel free to finish here. But as an actual final note, I want to give everyone a little update as to what's been happening in my life. First of all, my debut feature Queen Evil just won the Best Horror Feature Award at the Clout Film Festival, which is a small film festival over in Sacramento, California, which is pretty exciting. I've also been offered a 2-year streaming contract with Roku and Amazon Fire TV, so if you're interested in seeing the film, hopefully you'll be able to catch it sometime soon. You can also follow my production company's Facebook page for updates with a link in the description. And secondly, I have had a pile of DVDs sitting on my entertainment unit for going on years now, and I've been planning to review all of them on this show. I've set myself a few goals for 2024, with one of them being to work my way through all of these. So bear with me, because we have a lot of territory to explore on Delightfully Devilish, and I'm looking forward to talking about all of these throughout the year. And that actually does it for today's episode of the series. You guys, if you want to see more episodes of this show, hit subscribe. If you want to suggest movies for it, leave them in the comment section below. Otherwise, until next time, I have been your host, Jukebox Harry. G'day, mate.
You're Australian. Be Australian. Excuse me, Kangaroo Jack.